It was back in the 80s where there was a guy who lived in the same village as me at the time. He had a small conservation studio, and he just happened to be looking for his first apprentice, and I happened to be looking for a job. So, you know, I did my 4 years apprenticeship with him and worked with him for probably about 15 years, and eventually moved on to have my own studio, which I ran for a couple of years, and then Martin asked me to eventually come in and run the workshop for him. The worst part of my job, and the bit I really don't like, is when you've got a panel like this and it's had some damage, in situ damage. So somebody's thrown a stone through and you have to replace a piece of glass in situ. It's such a fiddly job. You've got to fold back the lead, remove the damaged piece and put it in. It's just not a very pleasant job. That's about as bad as it gets. Well, this particular project, I mean, it's obviously a high-class William Wales window, and it's since it got re-leaded just in the 50s, about early 50s after the war, it's in good condition. You know, the majority of the glass is still intact, apart from where things have been placed, you know, possibly from bomb damage following the war, where you can't do anything about that, and subsequently a little bit of vandalism. So the glass itself is in pretty good condition, so it's unique in that sense. But the problem with this, and the reason why it's getting put into the protective glazing, is because of the unstable paint pigment. We need to stop that in its tracks and sort of like just hold it where it is, so we don't want to lose any more pigment. So that's the whole idea of the environmental protective glazing. It's basically just soldered onto the back of the brass, and that then folds to, so it works well on timber or stone or whatever. If there's any little discrepancies, it just folds to the little, you know, bits of things sticking out, so for little bits of profile, and it just takes up all that, you know. But what you've also got to have as well, you've got to have the ventilation gap. Yeah. What you don't want to be doing is completely sealing it back, and it defeats the object totally. So you try and have a couple of little gaps at the top and some at the bottom. This will be the sill. That's where it sits. Is that the sill though? Yeah. Yep. Yep. So that will sit on the sill. So as long as there's a couple of little gaps, you don't want big glaring bits of light coming through, so they've got to be quite discreet. But that's got to circulate all the way around. We took that lead off. We took that piece of glass out as well. Because if you try to take that piece of glass out, then try to get it back in, you'd end up breaking it. Mm-hmm. So what we did, you can see that's a new piece of lead there. So we actually attached a new piece of lead on the top. You can't tell when it's up in the window. But that's why that's there. But we took it out to see whether we could actually bond it together. If we could have bonded it, we'd have taken the whole thing out, bonded it, and then put it back in. Yeah. But if you look on, there's all this black stuff all around here. Yeah. That's when we're talking about that waterproofing with the cement that you did with your panel when you made yours. It just hasn't been cleaned off properly.
Yeah. Right.
And you can see a lot of this pigment loss here, and all this will have been when it was waterproofed. It had just lifted all that off.
Okay. So once you've done all the glass painting, once it's finished, the final stage, the final firing at a much more reduced temperature, is the silver stain. So you just flood the whole area with a pigment which has got silver in it, literally silver. And what it does is in the heat process, it sucks out all the silica within the glass and exchanges it with the silver to give us the stained glass, to the yellow effect. So depending on how much silver's in the, so you can get a rich amber stain by it, so that's got more silver in it compared to a lemon yellow, which has got much more reduced. So it's just that exchange then in the heat process that creates the staining of the glass. It's just a stain process. The good thing about doing sort of certain things like drapery, if you're trying to do a copy, you have to try to get it exactly right because that's what you're trying to do. But with certain naturalistic sort of forms, you can actually be a little bit more freer about how you paint it, because that's exactly what they would have done when they were painting, say for instance, that stuff there. They would have been following a cartoon. But you know, when you're producing a stained glass window, you produce your design, you have your cartoon, which is a full version of what the window's going to look like, in pen and ink usually, or charcoal, and you use that then for the glass painting.
Best thing about my job personally is being able to work on, well, I mean, all the jobs have their own unique characteristics, but being able to work on a lovely little church in the Yorkshire Dales with no one around. Perfect day.